Welcome learners. This video is about the Sentinelese people of the Sentinel Island, who are the most inaccessible primitive tribes of the islands. In this video, we shall be discussing about the serious threats faced by the Sentinelese. It also explores various expeditions of culture contact and changes in the life situations of the Sentinelese tribes.
Culture contact, change and threats.
The Negrito hunting-gathering communities have been exclusively dwelling in the Andaman Islands for thousands of years. They did not like the outsiders disturbing them there. They vehemently resented and resisted the establishment of a permanent settlement here by the British in 1858. It took the British several years to settle themselves and establish friendly relations with the tribes of Great Andaman, but they left the Sentinelese alone. The Anthropological Survey of India and the Andaman and Nicobar administration made serious efforts at making contacts with those tribes only in 1967 through joint expeditions, and this continued through the 1970s and 80s. The Sentinelese initially resented the intrusion of outsiders. They used their bows and arrows on many occasions to defend themselves when they felt their domains were being encroached upon. On any suspected aggression either by the state or the settlers, they tried to defend themselves aggressively. The contact teams have been offering them gifts of coconut, bananas and pieces of iron from a distance, which they seemed to have a liking for. They reportedly accepted those gifts, which were very discreetly dropped ashore by the official parties visiting them occasionally. However, they did not allow them to reach handshaking distance. The administration and the Anthropological Survey of India succeeded in making friendly contact with them in early 1991. During the joint expedition to the North Sentinel Island on January 4 and 22nd February 1991, the Sentinelese for the first time approached the lifeboat and received a gift of coconuts. A few of them also boarded the lifeboat during the February visit. There were men, women and children in these groups. The officials stood in the water near the shore and gave them more gifts. The Sentinelese demanded more gifts. A few women showed their annoyance at not receiving their adequate share. Contact expeditions among Sentinelese continued under the direction of T.N. Pandit. These expeditions were a series of planned visits with gifts for the Sentinelese in view of coaxing them. While there was some breakthrough in 1990s, these expeditions had to be discontinued due to the hostility of the Sentinelese. As late of 2006, the Sentinelese reportedly killed 2 fishermen who were allegedly illegally fishing within the range of the island. When the helicopter tried to recover the bodies, the Sentinelese drove them off by a hail of arrows. Those bodies have still not been recovered to this date, although it is believed that those bodies were buried in shallow graves by the Sentinelese themselves. The Andaman and Nicobar administration has tried to befriend the Sentinelese by offering them gifts of coconuts, bananas and pieces of iron from a distance by a team of officials and experts.
Threats faced.
These are serious threats which put them not only vulnerable but could result in their extinction if corrective measures are not adhered on the priority basis. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands is a land of paradoxes, with rich land with flora and fauna, but poor and vast vanishing indigenous tribes. There are unexplored minerals and rich cultural heritage of the indigenous populations. Civilization has not yet overwhelmed them. The indigenous populations of Andaman and Nicobar Islands were able to sustain themselves as long as they were out of the shadow of the so-called civilization. However, the moment the process of civilizing and domesticating began, their number started to decline. In the case of the primitive tribals of the islands, the Great Andamanis, the Onge, the Sentinelese and the Jarawa, the external forces posed the biggest challenge to their physical survival. Here, an attempt will be made to examine the threats which are applicable to the Sentinelese and other tribes of the islands.
Deforestation.
It has been reported that the main threat to the indigenous tribes is the environmental destruction in terms of deforestation and damaging of the seashore. On account of deforestation, trees are being felled, rare animals, plants and bird species are fast vanishing. The new settlements for outsiders are at the cost of the local primitive tribal groups. As a result, there is depletion in the forest cover. Clearing of forests accelerated the diseases like malaria, as cleared forests have become breeding sites for mosquitoes.
Encroachment.
There has been encroachment into the territories of the indigenous people primarily by the settlers. The state and the administration can avoid this if they want. However, due to the pressure on the land, more and more outside populations keep infiltrating into the land of the indigenous population, thereby threatening their very survival.
Tourism.
Tourist resorts, guest houses and hotels are constructed at the cost of the indigenous population. It has been reported that a lot of land has been acquired in the name of tourism without really being able to use those lands. There have been plans in paper by the India Tourism Development Corporation for Andaman and Nicobar administration in terms of expansion of the tourism industry in these islands in view of increasing the foreign exchange. Foreigners are not allowed to visit the tribal areas and other restricted areas. There are laws to protect the flora and fauna of the land, but unfortunately, there are too many loopholes. The indigenous people who were the real masters of the land have now become paupers in their own country. They used to go about with bows and arrows, freely hunting and gathering for their livelihood, but now they cannot even carry the traditional weapons. Those who taught others about the sustainable management of natural resources are on the verge of extinction. Contrarily, the settlers have the superior know-how and they are thriving in the islands.
Welfare measures.
The nature of development and welfare measures undertaken by the state in view of planned development of the islands has taken a toll. The nature of development seems to be oriented towards the safety and security of the settlers alone. Crores of rupees are being pumped into the islands by the state for the development of the local people. But the Sentinelese, the Jarawas, the Onjas and the Great Andamanis and Shompens are surely not the prime beneficiaries. The dream of the indigenous tribes still remains too far-fetched to be realized concretely. There is the same lacuna in the fields of education, health, mortality, human rights, basic amenities, and so on. Rampant corruption as in the mainland India has left the island indigenous groups marginalized.
Assimilation of the tribes into the mainstream.
Various efforts by the state and the researchers are oriented towards assimilation of the Andaman tribes into the mainstream. Whatever expeditions have been undertaken by the contact parties of the researchers and anthropologists have no doubt been well intentioned. However, these efforts seem to have adversely affected the tribes. Force has also been used to subdue the tribes. Various strategies have been used to subtly put pressure on the tribes to accept the modern civilization under the garb of bringing them to the mainstream. It has also been observed that some tribals from among the Great Andamanis and the Sentinelese are in the state police or in the government working as class 4 employees. Physical violence has been a common means or exercising control over the Andaman tribes.
Defense and economic interests.
A few years ago, the government announced setting up of a tri-services command on the strategically located Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It was in order to clamp down on increasing arms and narcotics running by insurgent groups through sea lanes in the Bay of Bengal. The rationale for increasing the forces in the region was to protect the 300-odd uninhabited islands along the Malacca Straits. It is alleged that this region has become a haven for smuggling and piracy on high seas using some of the uninhabited islands. The implications of the increased force level is obviously the availability of more men and material in the region. Economic reason is also given as the main rationale for the above defense program. Malacca Straits, said to be the busiest trade route, is infested by pirates and smugglers. The trade route passes hardly 30 miles from the Indian territory. The Navy base is expected to neutralize the menace created by the smugglers. Until recently, there were more than 1,119 registered small-scale village and handicrafts units, apart from 4 medium-sized industrial units. The engineering units have been engaged in the production of sawdust, briquettes, polythene bags, and so on. There are also production units for paints and varnishes, fiberglass and mini flow mills, soft drinks and beverages, aluminum doors and windows, and so on. Small scale and handicrafts units, apart from engaging in shell crafts, bakery products, rice milling, and furniture making, are also involved in the production of oilseeds crushing. Apart from these, there are many other establishments engaged in the manufacturing of goods which benefit the settlers but have proved to be detrimental to the identity and culture of the primitive tribal groups.
Conclusion.
The Sentinelese is perhaps the most isolated tribal community of the country. The name Sentinelese is derived from the name of the island they inhabit. They had virtually no contact from outside world until very recently. They have exclusive inhabitation in the Andaman island of North Sentinel. The Sentinelese is a hunting-gathering community. They hunt wild boar, turtle, and fish with bows and arrows and spears. The Sentinelese are said to live in the communal huts. When there are disputes of any kind involving the members of the tribe, the eldest person in the tribe has the authority and mandate to take a decision and settle the problem. Their socio-economic system is guided and safeguarded by the customary laws. Their ritualistic practices remain still unknown to the outside world. The Sentinelese is one of the endangered languages of the world. Since the Sentinelese are still not very friendly with the outside world, most of their known material culture is on the basis of observations during attempts to contact them. The Sentinelese have been living in the Sentinel Island for hundreds of years without any disturbance until very recently. They vehemently resisted efforts by various agencies to penetrate their region.
After going through this unit, you would have a general understanding of socio-economic life of the Sentinelese, life situation of the Sentinelese, material culture of Sentinelese, and general information about culture, contact, and threat to their identity.
Thank you.